From Variety, celebrating more than 118 years covering the business of entertainment, this is the Award Circuit Podcast. Girls5Eva star Paula Pell is enjoying some of the freedom that comes with this stage of life.
And wait till you're 60, because those filters are falling off now a little bit. Then when you're 60, you're like, oh, I do not care. I used to be the most worried about what people think on everything I said and did in my life. I was total codependent, total people pleaser, and now I am really not at all.
I'm Michael Schneider, and on this episode of the award-winning Variety Award Circuit Podcast, we talk to Girls5Eva stars Paula Pell and Busy Phillips about why you need to tune in if you haven't already. Also on this episode, we talk to the directors behind the Quiet on Set documentary on Investigation Discovery and the reaction to its expose on the dangers of being a child actor on one of the youth-geared linear networks. It's all next on this edition of the Variety Award Circuit Podcast. Stay close. Created by Meredith Scardino, Girls5Eva takes on the absurdity of pop culture through the lens of four women who enjoyed fleeting fame as an early aughts girl group and are now trying to mount a comeback as older women. Sarah Bareilles is Dawn, who gave up dreams of fame to raise her family. Renee Elise Goldsberry's character Wiki is the diva whose attempt at a solo career didn't pan out. Busy Phillips plays Summer, the spacey wannabe influencer who belatedly realizes her marriage is a lie. And Paula Pell is Gloria, who gave up music to become a dentist. When one of their long-forgotten songs resurfaces as a sample on a hip-hop tune, they reunite.
We are Girls5Eva!
Why Girls5Eva?
Because we're gonna be famous 5Eva, young 5Eva.
I remember you. You had that song on the soundtrack of Blue Crush. TBF, Tiny Butts Forever.
That is us. Girls who stick together. Reunion! I don't know if we should do this. We're not little Ariana Grandes anymore.
Just call me Ho Spice. But don't write it down because it looks like hospice.
Let's go, ladies.
Where are we going?
The top, Gloria. Ever heard of it?
Okay.
This is going to be the biggest comeback in pop music history.
We are four women with greatness in us. We are proof that it is never too late to follow your dreams.
They ate us up! I haven't gotten that level of applause since I agreed to leave an airplane.
Gonna be famous 5Eva.
Four grown ladies trying to be pop stars. Strap in.
It's an ambitious series that mixes a 30 Rock level density of jokes with a deeper storyline about what it's like to pursue a passion after you thought the opportunities were long gone. Girls5Eva spent its first two seasons on Peacock, and when a third season didn't look likely, Netflix rescued the series. Now, all 3 seasons are available on the streamer. I recently spoke with Phillips and Pell about this new season and what it meant to reunite with their co-stars.
This is podcast enter name.
You both like pros with podcasts now.
Well, she has her own.
Yeah, I know. So
she
this
is a big pro.
I know. It's kind of almost like intimidating to interview someone who has their own successful podcast.
Really? No, not really. You're good at this. This is what you do for a living.
This is part of it now. This has become the hosting thing, which...
Even if I didn't have a podcast, you know, Paula and I both have in common, we're professional talkers.
Yes.
So I think I've always just liked to talk a lot.
We like to talk. We were at the podcast the other day that they had a lot of stuff they were going to ask us, and I don't think we... I think we
she
just
asked
really
one
were on a roll. We were on
Yeah.
kind of a little caffeine roll in the morning, and she asked us one question, and it got us going, and we were like,
and it was
like down a toboggan.
And it was, how are you? And then...
Yeah, and we're like, well,
let me tell you something.
Especially
Busy
the two
and
of
let's
us
start
together.
from the beginning.
I know. Especially us, the two of us together.
But we can be reined in. In the afternoons, we can be reined in.
For sure.
We slow down a little bit.
You have your beverages, you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, the two real singing stars of Girls5Eva. Let's start with that.
The most
right there.
trained.
Yes. The secret weapon behind Girls5Eva. I mean, everyone knows Sarah Bareilles. Everyone knows Renee Elise Goldsberry. They know their singing prowess. But what they don't know is how good you two are.
Well, I actually have to say, I mean, we are sort of kidding, obviously, with the fact that, you know, we're not the best two singers in the group. But I will say that it is interesting to me how many people are surprised by the fact that we do sing.
Yeah.
And that we really, like, you know, harmonize. And we do a lot of the singing for the show live while we're filming it. Hot mics.
Yeah.
We're not lip syncing. We're, like, actually singing live.
Which is so much fun.
It's not pre-recorded. Which normally, like, when I've done TV shows where there's someone singing karaoke or you're singing anything, it's always pre-recorded and then you have a track and then you just lip sync to it. That is not how we do it.
How did that happen, by the way? Because I remember hearing that way back in the first two seasons, too, and being pretty impressed because you don't have to do that. You could just pre-record and lip sync.
We do sometimes lip sync it for some performances and things like that. We put down the track, and then we also have these albums at the end of each season, so we kind of expand the song, and so we do record some of it. But this year in particular, I feel like there was more live that was really fun. And then for the premiere, we got to sing outside the theater, like live. It was the most wind I have ever experienced in my life.
It was like in true Girls5Eva fashion. It had been a beautiful day. We'd been doing press all day. We got to the sound check and the wind started. And it's just so Girls5Eva. Like, we can't help it. At this point, the lines between reality and
very
fiction
blurred.
Are blurred. And
we shot a scene last year on the roof, or the first season?
The second season.
Second season, we shot a scene where we were trying to do that kind of Beatles thing up on the roof, and then there was a helicopter that came down and blew every wig off, pulled off
Summer's
extensions and knocked me over and everything. So we were laughing so hard at the premiere when that wind came up because we looked at each other. We're like, it has to.
Here it is.
You know, and Meredith always loves an underdog. So she loves when we have these kind of real life things when we're promoting where we're just like, well,
here we are.
Here we are getting our hair knocked over.
You know, having a professional like Sarah Bareilles involved is beneficial in times like that because her team were the ones that were doing our sound for the premiere. So they were recording it, running it through their board. And so it ended up, you couldn't hear the wind.
It's so clear. You can't hear the wind at all. You see our hair going, but you can't, it's so crystal clear and you can really hear the harmonies. And so it was really a thrill to actually sing. I love harmonizing. I'm a theater nerd, so I was busy. And so to be with these two theater phenoms, Broadway ladies, we're just always like,
and pop stars in their
own
right.
We're so fanning out.
And we keep asking about when there's going to be more opportunities to see Girls5Eva for reals, which I know is tough with all of your schedules trying to make that work.
I don't know. I'm a veil.
I'm a veil. We're all a veil. We just have to kind of. You know, we just got on Netflix where people are binging it away. I'm seeing a lot of wonderful promotion, and I'm hearing a lot of just chit chat among people in the biz that I know, and it seems like there's a lot of eyes on it. So we are lighting all our. I'm lighting all my lesbian candles.
And I'm lighting all of your lesbian candles as well in the hopes that we get a fourth season. But also, yeah, I mean, I said to the other girls earlier this week because, you know, we had done 2 weeks of press for the third season and the launch on Netflix in New York. And then we were all here for a few days doing press together. And I was like, why didn't we plan a little show here somewhere at a club or something? We could have done it. It would have been so fun.
We'll do it soon.
This Emmy season is long. The FYC season, it never ends.
Well, I don't even understand now because of the strike. Like, when there's like 47 Emmys in the next like 6 months or
all
something?
All Emmys all the time.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that what's happening? Because the Emmys just happened? Or now they're happening? Have they happened yet?
So
last
year's happened in January. So then this one will be back in September.
Okay.
I think I'm trying to pull you guys an Oscar nom. Though I don't know if you're eligible.
Sure,
but if you could perform at the next year's Oscars, maybe that works. Or you got to perform on the first episode of the new Busy Phillips talk show.
Well, we are actually trying to book
I cannot
the girls
wait
for
for that. I can't wait. I miss Busy doing a talk show.
Yeah.
It's a perfect, wonderful, beautiful fit, and I am so excited for her to do a talk show again.
I love you
It's
so
the
much,
best.
Paula. These girls knew about it long before it was announced because this has been in process for quite some time. Casey St. Anne, she was my showrunner on Busy Tonight and who I do my podcast with. She and I have been working with QVC for months and months and months now. And we finally got everything squared away and ready to go. So yeah, I'm super excited. It's going to be fairly soon, and these girls better get ready because they're coming on the show. Yeah. They're coming on the show.
And it's on QVC Plus,
QVC Plus,
which I have no idea what that is, but
Listen,
it sounds very, very 2024.
I know it's free, and I know you can get it on your phone if you want. And you can, it's an app. I believe it's an app. I'm super excited. I think that especially when Busy Tonight was canceled, I was bummed. I was very bummed, especially for a lot of reasons. But it's difficult. I still think it's important, and I think there should be more women in that space. In a late night talk show space. But here's the truth and the fact of the matter. They're not being there. There's no place to put them. These guys all have these jobs. They're not going anywhere, clearly.
Yeah, and it seems like we're losing more female talk show hosts these days. Over the past year, we've lost a bunch, too.
I was actually talking to Sam B, and I are friends, and I was talking to her yesterday, and she's like, Busy, I am so excited about this. This is amazing. And I was like, Sam, I'm ready for you. What do we have to do? So here's the thing. I guess, in this industry, as everything, with all of the streamers sort of gets exponentially bigger and bigger, but the business also we know is contracting in many ways as well. And, I kind of was just feeling how do we go sort of outside of the normal system that has existed and see, is there a different way that we can do this thing? And QVC Plus was down to try my idea. So we'll see.
Busy's very inspiring when you watch her operate and have ideas for projects and then push through and actually make them happen. And no, she is, because I feel like you always think in a bigger, more broad, modern way of guess what? They don't do this anymore, I remember one time saying to her, I would like to do a podcast, but then I'm writing this movie that's kind of the theme of this podcast, so I don't want to burn off the jokes that I would do in this podcast, burn it off for the movie. And she just looked at me and she was like, nobody cares. She's like, nobody keeps track anymore of the diversifying of your comedy in all these different they watch and listen to what they watch, and sometimes they love hearing the same bit from something else.
It's true. And also, own your IP. You have an idea for a movie, you write it into a YA book first, and then you own the IP, and then get.
Oh, I didn't know that trick.
Well, I'm just saying there are all of these different ways that we need to, as artists and creators, start to change the way that we think about how we get to make what we want to make.
And
right?
both of you have been so multi-hyphenate over the years anyway. To think that I first knew the name Paula Pell as a writer before you became such a superstar on screen as well.
Lord. Well, I don't know about that.
Wait, can I just tell you
Thanks,
something?
Mom.
Mark Silverstein, my ex-husband, and I were chatting the other night, and he was like, what did he just watch? Something. And he was like, did you know that Debbie Downer didn't even exist before Paula invented that?
And Rachel Dratch.
And Rachel Dratch. But he was like, but I thought that was a saying or something, a Debbie Downer. But no, that you came up with that. And it is a thing that is just in the lexicon. Anyone uses that to say, I don't know, she's kind of a Debbie Downer.
Yeah, Rachel was the one that came up with it. And she said, do you want to write a sketch about a woman that always comes in and says the thing that really nobody wants to hear, but she's not malicious. And we knew exactly, because we had not only had people sometimes at the office like that, but it's never a malicious person. So you have to write it very carefully that it's not a jerk. It's a person that comes in and wants to be kind of the first one to break the news of like, did you guys hear about Roy? And then Amy's character is like, who's Roy, Debbie? And she's like, Siegfried. And it's, it's like, has to give you the bad news quietly, but like also concern about gas stoves, all those things. So, yeah.
But that is funny that you're right. Debbie Downer wasn't, though, the until you guys created that. So you should have trademarked that.
Yeah, well, too late now.
But it is always funny when you hear about phrases that you just think were always a part of the lexicon. But no, you actually had a hand in creating something in the lexicon.
Well, the fun thing about that one is that I have never not met someone that doesn't, if they like that hasn't had a Debbie Downer in their life. So they always tell you who it is. It's like, oh, it's this lady named, or this guy named, and then they explain how in their world, whatever they're doing, if they're a veterinarian, if they're if they're whatever, there will always be that person that does the little whisper of like, so I guess you didn't get RSV like everyone else. It's just that person that always has to be giving you the thing that's on your phone where you go, I don't want to read this first thing in the morning. This is sad or this is scary or whatever, but certainly was fun to do.
Well, I do also love wordplay, and now I can't not think about Hospice.
Hospice. That's John Mahone, one of the writers, came up with Hospice. That is one of the funniest
Don't write it down.
On earth. Just call me Hospice, but don't write it down because it spells hospice.
Yes.
It's just the funniest. I love jokes like that. And because I'm a writer, even though I'm not writing on the show, I'll always have that little bit of like, God, I wish I would have.
Well, because it reminds me too of like on SNL, the
Jeopardy things.
Yeah, the Jeopardy ones.
Yeah. Therapist.
Yeah.
It's the rapist. Yeah.
Yeah. Or anal bum cover, album cover. Yeah. So it's like, it's such a stupid joke, but like, I love it so much.
I can't get enough of it. And it's hard to think of. Like, it has to kind of come to you. I remember one similarly in a sketch, when Sherry O'Terry used to do Simmer Down Now, when she played that really a little like kind of Southern lady. And she goes, Simmer Down Now.
Yeah.
We were rewriting it, and I came up with a joke where she holds up a Donna Summer album and says, Summer Donna. And it was Donna Summer. And it was just one of those that came to me all of a sudden because I was trying to think of what that sounded like. And then I was like, Donna Summer, she can hold up an album. And it was one that I was proud of for quite a few years. I hung on that one as my sketches continued to fail.
Stop it. I can't believe that anything failed.
I fed off it like a crust of bread as a villager.
So season 3 now out, and like you mentioned, like you're starting to get responses from folks. Like,
I went to the premiere last night of my friend Tommy Kail's new show. We Were the Lucky Ones, which is so good. Sidebar. We're not talking about that, but it is really.
Suddenly this turned into a We Are the Lucky Ones podcast.
Honestly, it was really beautiful. But I was like very surprised by how many people came up to me and they were like, oh my gosh, I binged your show this past weekend. It was incredible. I had never seen an episode. Yeah. And just anecdotally speaking, I mean, it feels different, It's
fantastic.
And it's so exciting because
lots of eyes on it.
Yeah, because it feels like people, not just that there's more awareness. We've been, Netflix has been so incredible in terms of all of this press that they have done for us and creative ideas like having that little show before the premiere where we sang for real.
The piano from the show, the clear piano.
On the red carpet, essentially. But, it feels like people in the world are, it's popping up and they're able to check out the show. Oh my God, that show's so good. You guys are hilarious. When did you start doing that? Like 2020, ma'am. Yeah, 2020 we started.
Right, in the middle of a pandemic.
In the middle of a pandemic.
It's also nice that it's shorter seasons, so when people are now discovering it, they can really binge
the whole series,
like a network season.
Yeah,
they can just
it's 22 episodes.
Go over a couple days and just like really binge it.
But I will say, multiple people last night said to me, I hope Netflix picks it up next year, and I hope they give you a few more episodes. I need like 8 to 10. And I was like, oh, okay.
They're like, you just
Two people said
teased
that.
me with this
I
one.
know.
Well, what's fun about, especially coming from sort of the Tina Fey factory with Meredith Scardino, sort of that dense joke. So you do have to almost watch the episodes a couple of times.
On closed caption.
And on closed caption, and also a lot of pausing to see the jokes, to see all the little things. And sometimes they're referenced, sometimes they're not. And there's like a poster in the background. You have to pause and look at what it says.
Always. You go onto set and you see like there'll be some weird. I mean, our hotel we stay at this season is Divorced Dad Suites.
Yeah.
And like when
Sweetlets.
And when we first got there to that hotel and saw all the graphics that they had put on things, and the vending machine has birthday presents for their kids, and oh God, it was so funny.
But even just small things. I mean, there are so many, to your point, there are so many small moments. Sarah taking the hot pancakes out and putting them on her shoulders,
Right.
like as little heating pads. For me, I always have to watch the episodes twice.
Yeah, me too.
And it was funny at the premiere because I feel like people missed half the jokes.
Yeah. Well, it's because people are laughing and kind of on top of the other jokes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It goes so fast.
But also what I love so much is about the show is such dense joke ratio, but also somehow finding heart and character, where we'll have moments that are so sweet and touching, and the finale always feels like that feeling when you're about to cry. Like it's such a good.
So you know what Tommy Kail said to me last night, which is so nice because he watched the whole. He doesn't have your phone number, but he had texted Sarah and Renee and me after he had binged the third season, and he was like, "You guys, this is incredible. I'm so thrilled for you." And last night he was like, oh, that Paula Pell. And I was like, I know, Tommy, he's the best. And he goes, do you want to know what actually my favorite moment in the finale, I think, was? And I said, what? And he goes, when you guys are around the piano and you're singing and you kind of move her hair really gently. And he's like, and in that like 1 second, you're like, these people love each other. And he's like, and I was like, that is, I mean, and of course that's like from a director's perspective, right? But like, that was just real. Like I was just adjusting Paula Pell's hair.
No, we all preen each other.
We do preen each other.
And we just are always, my nieces and I, my sister and I, we all preen each other. We're always like, what is this? What's in your hair? What's the, like always touching.
When you're like intimate with a friend.
And Busy has always, because I have very long
beautiful hair
and thick hair. And so a lot of times I have all these different hairstyles in the show. Mark Safrani, thank you. And Busy will sometimes in a scene just naturally come over and like
adjust
scoop my curl away or something. We'll move,
like a little
if
fly
there's
away
hair on your lipstick, we'll do it. And if they keep it in, it feels natural.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And it's so intimate. It's like.
And we weren't aware that we were shooting a show. We were just being and
so
singing
true.
around a piano. And then they went, oh no, we shot this. It's going to be on Netflix.
Exactly. But yeah, the fact that there's only 6 episodes, but you do a lot this season, and it sounded a little bit like guerrilla filmmaking this season too, and sort of the block shooting and how you were able to kind of pull off a lot of it looking like you were traveling all over the country when you were probably in the same exact production facility most of the time.
The first time I think I did block shooting in a significant way was maybe AP Bio. I just remember it was so new. We just never used to do that, but they figured that out and it saved so much money and it was so much more streamlined. And I remember doing it there and being like, wait, I was mad. And I was getting screwed up because I'm like, but that character Helen is always kind of at a 12. So, it wasn't like I was adjusting too many nuanced emotions in my character. But with this season, last couple seasons, if we block shoot, we're like, there was one where Busy and I had like an argument or something, and then we realized that we shot a scene that went right after it, and we were perfectly fine with each other, and we're like, oh no.
Yeah, this season, that was the because the second season we did a little bit of cross-boarding as well. It's just a thing that everybody wants to do now because it saves so much money.
Cross-boarding,
Yeah.
Well, cross-boarding and block
Yeah,
shooting,
yeah,
both.
yeah.
Both.
Both.
But this season, I had all 6 of our scripts printed out in like a giant folder, and I had just like
She had like the Bible so we could check it.
And so we would go back and forth so we could like make sure that we were tracking our characters' story arcs, because we all have really specific character arcs, especially this season.
And the seasons have such a good build
Yes.
that if you go too much ahead, you're like, oh wait, I'm not in that headspace yet. When I did Wine Country, Amy did a great thing where she had a sobriety. Amy had a drunken like a drunken scale of where it was always like, since we were jumping around, of like how drunk you are in this scene.
Oh, that's funny.
Because it was Wine Country and we were in Napa and we're like, characters are drinking wine. And so sometimes we go back and it's like, now you're not drunk yet still again. So we're going back. But then it's like, now you're much more drunk.
Now you're a 9.
And it made sense because if you don't keep track of that, you can really screw it up.
And I will say that like we have incredible glam teams across the board on Girls5Eva, because really so much of that continuity work has to be kept by hair, makeup, wardrobe.
Yeah.
Because we're doing these like incredibly quick changes. So in like one location, we could be doing 3 different episodes and like 5 different hair, makeup, and wardrobe.
Yeah.
Looks.
And these are outfits. These are looks.
They're
looks with a W.
L-E-W, yes.
We really had a great time this year because it's the first time in 3 seasons that we were able to have a crew without masks.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So we really bonded with the crew this year. I mean, we always loved our crew, but when they have masks, you just, and when you have to kind of leave, like, don't meander, because second season was Omicron. First season was deep COVID. But this third season,
pre-vaccines,
we still were getting tested, but it was so nice to sit and kind of shoot the shit with people and like be, talk to
see faces.
See faces.
We've had a lot of the same crew since the first season, but I mean,
you just didn't know what they look like.
No.
One of our cameramen who we love so much, Dave is a very handsome man. I mean, I'm a hard sell, but he's a very handsome man, and he looks a little like Rob Lowe. He could be in his family a little bit, like a cousin,
like an
older older brother. And he took off his mask during the second season for something outside to ask something, and I introduced myself to him because I thought it was a new camera guy.
Yeah.
And I went, "Hey, I'm Paula," and everyone looked at me and went, "What are you doing?" "That's Dave." And I go, "That's not Dave." And we just were laughing so hard because he looked completely different than I thought he did under the mask.
Yeah, and after that, there was the Dave rule where everyone has to wear a mask except for Dave.
Exactly.
So we can all gawk at him.
Exactly.
Honestly, our crew is incredible, and we have kind of all been through so much with each other in the last 3 years.
Yeah, think about between all of the COVID, and then you managed to finish pretty much shooting right before the strikes, but then that also sort of delayed things.
And
on
I got
show.
COVID the last day of the second day of the last week, and so we had to push a couple more extra day. I felt bad that everyone had to
that's right.
stay
I forgot
a little
about
bit
that.
longer, but they did a beautiful job at figuring it out.
Our very last day of shooting was just pickups in a process trailer of the van.
Inside the van.
So
With
just like
John
pickup
Letts.
thing, like inserts, like pickup things. But that was the first day of the writer's strike. So like we didn't have any writers on set. It was a bummer. Like it was.
But it was also
and
like
then it was
a
over.
complete church giggle. I call it like giggle fest the entire day because we were so packed in there and we were in our I wasn't in too skimpy of an outfit, but you guys were all in kind of like show outfits, weren't you? Skimpy?
Yeah, I was wearing that brilliant outfit that Matthew Hemestath, who's the wardrobe designer on our show, the idea is that Summer decides that she needs to figure out who she is and what she wants to wear, and so she burns all of her clothes, and then like a la Gone with the Wind, shows
Everything
up
in the hotel
with an outfit she has supposedly sewn together using items from the divorced dad's sweetlets. And it was the comforter that was on the bed, tassels, and all of those things. Like if you look back at the episode,
dish sponge,
you can see,
the shower curtain.
Shower, but also the loofahs on my
not
shoulders.
The bathroom
shower loofahs. And all of those things are in the divorced dad's sweetlets.
Bedspread, like all that stuff.
Look at the episode.
Yeah. It kind of works. Well,
it's insane.
Summer,
you can wear anything and look cute.
Yeah.
Summer, in many ways, is kind of the hero at the end. Not to give too much away.
Yes.
But
Listen.
I love that she's the hero.
Yes, I do too.
Yeah, I mean, she's struggling to figure out, okay, she can make her own decisions now. What's her voice? What is her take on things? And in the end, she
she's
saves the day.
Shiro.
She is the Shiro.
Exactly.
She's the Shiro. I mean, I love the journey, especially of Summer. And I think what Meredith Scardino and all of our writers and Tina Fey are always able to do in, honestly, all the shows that Tina has made. Is like we said, there are such hard jokes and it's so funny and absurd in so many ways. And yet it's also very grounded and has a lot to say about what it is to be a woman in this moment in time and of a certain age, and a woman trying to make their dreams come true, a woman trying to come to terms with the ending of their long-term relationship and figuring out in their, 40s, who are they? Like, what are these decisions that I have made up until this point? And, as a person who is also in their early 40s, who has also found themselves divorced, I do think that there's a thing that happens when you reach middle age where you do take stock of how other people's opinions and influence have influenced you and whether or not that's who you actually are and what you actually want to be.
And wait till you're 60.
I know.
Because those filters are falling off now a little bit on you, starting to fall off. Then when you're 60, you're like, oh, I do not care. Like I used to be the most worried about what people think on everything I said and did in my life. I was total codependent, total people pleaser. And now I am really not at all. And I'm still a very kind person, but I just tell the truth. I just look and
you're the kindest.
But I mean, I just answer directly if someone says, "Do you like that?" And
But you also know yourself now. I think that, like, I was just having this conversation with a woman who's a little bit younger than I am, who has just recently had her first child, and she's like, "I don't know if this or this or this," and I'm like, well, you have to figure that out for yourself. You have to know,
right?
You have to know yourself, and it's really hard to know yourself for all of us.
I had a therapist tell me one time in my 20s, late 20s, I was going through a very difficult time, and I was in this kind of treatment program for depression and everything. And this therapist said, you're not that important. And I was furious. I wrote in my journal. I was so mad. And I was like, why would a therapist tell me that? I already have low self-esteem and feel terrible about myself. And you're not that important. And then it became like my mantra is that no one is having a meeting about you with a picture on the wall and a pointer going, can we talk more about how she's disappointed us? Like nobody, everyone is self-absorbed. Everyone is thinking of their own experience. Nobody is sitting there conspiring to be disappointed by your being assertive or anything. They really aren't.
Yeah.
They don't care.
No,
you're not that important.
That's
good news.
Kind of a breakthrough, but also I can't believe you're 60. Well, I don't believe you. I do not believe you.
I mean, I probably shouldn't be blasting it all over.
Why?
Because I'm kind of supposed to be more of the age of these girls, but we're pushing it with me. But, maybe she lied when she was getting in that girls group back in the day. Maybe she was older and she was just like, yeah, I'm your guys' age.
I mean, honestly, it totally tracks. Like, I feel like you used to be able to lie about everything because
That's
the
true.
internet didn't exist.
That's true.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite jokes from the party episode is the guy who was in the summer high school show.
Oh my God,
Turns out he
Zeke.
was in the 50s, in his 50s,
then.
and now
So
he's like
actually
80.
in his 50s when he shot that show.
Yeah, when he was a teenager surfing, and then now he's like 90.
Right, which also tracks for most of those shows in the 90s. So
Oh my
that totally
God.
makes
I was
sense.
on
Totally.
some of them.
But also to your point about sort of some of the messages of this show, I think the Sarah song about middle times is like the most beautiful.
It's
like you guys have
gorgeous.
all these parody songs that are so ridiculous, and then she like throws out like this emotional.
Now
like,
she writes at least one a year that just absolutely puts us away because they write so many masterful ones. Meredith Scardino and Kyle Breyer and Jeff Richmond and Jack Grabo, and they write such great comedy songs, and some of them actually sound like a great song. Like if you're not listening to the words, you're like,
Yeah.
I love this song.
oh, they're bops.
They're great bops, but she always writes the one that just puts us away.
Brings it
Like,
home.
I
Yeah.
mean, singing Medium Time around that piano, I was really crying. I wasn't faking it on camera. I was really crying.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like a thing that all of us, I mean, it's like it is sort of, again, it's funny doing this show because it does feel like what is the art and what is just our lives.
We're always
at
saying
this
that
point.
Meredith has been talking to our therapist because it just feels very, very familiar to ourselves, our characters, and where we're at in our lives, and where you do in this business get to that place where you're like, yeah, I don't have to have like compare and despair. I don't have to have that gigantic lofty goal. I could be super crazy happy doing something that I love with a bunch of people I love and making enough money to pay my bills and you know get a couple manicures sometimes.
The medium time.
The medium
The
time.
medium
I
time.
love it. I think it's relatable for all of us too.
Yeah.
Like I think you do there's like a thing that we get sold, right? Like that you want to just try to be the top number one, no matter what it is. But like, especially in our industry, I would say there's so much focus on the outcome of a thing. And the truth is like, this experience, like being able to do, I don't know, have the career that I've had, certainly have the career that you've had.
For sure.
I'm not like, we're in the medium time. And
Also-
I'm thrilled about it.
Also, when you tell people what the things you've done that you've had the most fun, it was never the thing that was the most expensive project or the most, big, lofty. It was always those medium ones. You're like, oh, this is the thing where my joy was at a crazy level.
Well, this is the thing that my joy is at a
and
crazy
this
level.
show is that for us.
What
Like
it is.
we can't get enough of it. So we hope we can get more of it.
Yeah. So how do we do that?
I don't know, Netflix?
Streamberry?
Streamberry. That made me laugh
Driving
so
by
hard.
with a bullhorn.
Well, you
at their
you guys, when I
homes?
had Busy Tonight, I did hire I used some budget and hired an airplane to fly above Netflix to try to save one day at a time because I loved that show so much. It didn't work.
My wife was writing for
I
that
know.
show. I know. And they were so thrilled to look up and see that. I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, that was me.
Oh my God.
That was my idea. Well, Gloria Kellett and I went to college together at
No, I
Loyola
know.
Marymount
I didn't
University.
know. I didn't know you sent that thing up
Oh,
there because
yeah.
I remember Janine showing
We
me
were
that.
like, we knew we were toward the end of the show, to be honest with you. And I was like, fuck it, let's just blow this budget. I'm not even kidding. How much would it cost? Let's do it. I was like, skywriting? No, let's get a plane with a banner.
Right.
Fly it around LA over Netflix. And we did it. And like, the cast of One Day at a Time were our guests on the show that night. And we took them out into the parking lot to see the plane as it flew over.
sweet.
And Gloria was like, are you kidding me? And I was like, we got literally $25 and like some free potato chips to make Busy Tonight, but we're blowing it today on this plane.
I love it.
I
That's
love it.
Incredible. And I'm sure the corporate overlords were thrilled for a show that had nothing to do with their...
Fuck it. They were going to cancel us anyway.
I also think it's really great the way this has launched together because it really does. A lot of my friends are like, I'm just approaching this as a new show. This is a new show that I want to binge. I want to binge those 3 seasons.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like
Yeah.
a residual 6 episodes of something that, we missed. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like really a relaunch in the best way.
A
I would
package,
agree.
right? And
Yeah,
it all kind
a
of
package.
wraps up like together in that final episode where you bring back a lot of the characters.
Yeah.
And then randomly Richard Kind.
Yeah.
Oh, Richard is just
He's
just
the funniest
delightful.
man on earth.
I also love the fact that in them performing to an empty crowd at Radio City Music Hall, that sort of goes back to that Hollywood Bowl experience that you all had
In
with
real life.
Sarah in front of a empty Hollywood Bowl
So
performing.
eerie and beautiful. I was nervous. We were nervous, but then when we got out there, it was just so intimate. And my wife and I had lived out here, and we started really getting into going to the Hollywood Bowl. We went to see Shaka Khan. We went to see Gladys Knight, and we were really getting into it. Like, who's there now? Who's there now? And for us to stand up there and just look out and just see this place that it's like, does the place exist without the people in it? Because the pandemic made you feel like that. You're like, is this even this if without a crowd, But it felt really intimate and sweet.
It was incredible.
And it was fun to be part of Sarah's, being so generous, doing her own music event for her to
For
bring
her
us
album
out
release,
and have us
yeah.
do our little shtick.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was so surreal.
It was.
And, she's playing at the Hollywood Bowl this summer, August 17th.
I know, in August.
And I was like, well, if you need us on stage,
Yeah.
Sarah, with the audience, we could also do that. And she was like,
She was like, that sounds fun.
no, I'm kidding.
I think Girls5Eva opens for Sarah Bareilles.
That's what
That
I
would be
said.
Fantastic.
We could open in the morning, and
Yes,
then it's
yes.
the morning opener of the actual. When we say open, we're just opening it for them to clean it.
I don't know.
And then hours later,
Just
she comes and does
just
her
a
show.
pitch, just a pitch, guys. I'm always pitching. I'm always never not pitching. Just a pitch. If we do know that we're coming back for a 4th season on Netflix by then, maybe we do use the opportunity. And maybe because, at the end of this 3rd season, spoiler alert, guys, if you're listening, but Wiki's having a bit of a Kate Bush moment because her song is being used in The Crown.
In the crowd, yes.
And maybe we shoot some stuff at the Hollywood Reel with real big audience, guys. Come on.
Yeah. All right.
Netflix?
You heard it here first.
Netflix? Anyone?
Netflix.
Sarah?
Bueller?
They do open the Hollywood Bowl in the morning for tourists who can just come in and walk around. So the Girls5Eva could even just guerrilla it and just
we could
hop
just-
up
we
on
could show up.
stage.
It also feels like something Girls5Eva would do. It's like we booked the Hollywood Bowl. It's at 10 in the morning.
It's at 10 in the morning, and we're just doing concessions.
Right.
Right.
Honestly, delicious roast chicken at the
I'd
bowl.
do it.
You know what I mean?
That's Busy Phillips and Paula Pell of Girls5Eva. Catch up on all 3 seasons via Netflix. After the break, we talk to Mary Robertson and Emma Schwartz, the filmmakers behind Investigation Discovery's Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV. From Los Angeles, this is the Award Circuit Podcast. And we're back. It's the Variety Award Circuit Podcast, and I'm Michael Schneider. Last week, longtime children's TV producer Dan Schneider filed a defamation lawsuit against the producers of the Investigation Discovery docuseries Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV, which uncovered alleged abuse and misconduct at Nickelodeon. Quiet on Set details Schneider's rise as the creator and producer of Nickelodeon shows including The Amanda Show, Drake and Josh, Zoe 101, iCarly, Victorious, and more. Former Nickelodeon writers, child stars, and crew members appear in the 5-episode series and accuse Schneider of creating a hostile work environment and sexualizing former child actors on television. In addition to Dan Schneider, Quiet on Set also investigates other people working at Nickelodeon at the time, including dialogue and acting coach Brian Peck. Interviewed in Quiet on Set is Drake and Josh star Drake Bell, who alleges he was a victim of Peck's sexual abuse. I spoke to Quiet on Set producers Mary Robertson and Emma Schwartz prior to the Schneider suit, so I didn't get a chance to talk to them about it or get their reaction. But during our recent conversation, which took place the day after the program's Emmy FYC event, we discussed what inspired them to create the docuseries, what they learned about it, and their response to some of the criticism that had already been levied against the show. I began by asking them about the response to the series.
The response to Quiet on Set has been thunderous and voluminous and beyond our every expectation. I think it has also been a compassionate and a generous response. And I think that, while there's aspects of being public about your story that are really challenging, I think that, the contributors by and large are feeling as though they are being met with met by a generous audience and a compassionate audience. A lot of what we heard last night from folks who were in the room and who watched the film, or one episode of the film last night, and from other folks who have seen the whole series, is this question of, will there be more? Which, I've been working in this business for almost 25 years and I've worked on a lot of projects, but I've rarely ever heard that question be asked so often. I think that there's very much a sense that there's very much a sense that there's more to grapple with here.
Yeah. You kind of feel like you've only sort of touched the surface of everything that's gone on. And over the years, I mean, we're talking about an industry that goes back, 50, 60 years, even more. So is there this sense now of, we've kind of opened up this can of worms, and now there's a lot more. And I'm sure people now are coming out of the woodwork and wanting to talk who maybe didn't want to talk before.
I mean, definitely, even if you just look at, public statements, social media, people have started to share, small slivers of their own experience. And we're certainly hearing from more people who have, had other experiences that either they felt mirrored in what we had shared, or that they felt, they might be in a place where they're ready to share that as well. And, we are very much committed to continuing to tell those stories if people are in a place that, they want to continue to share. Because I think, the more we learn and the more we hear, the more likely that continues to be part of people's understanding, becomes a catalyst for people to say, okay, well, something does need to change. This wasn't just the show I watched last week.
And I'm sure it's been striking to you too, in at first trying to get people to talk, to now people really want to talk. I mean, I'm still struck by the fact that Drake Bell was willing to even do this panel, when I assume, the process of getting him to open up and talk must have been fascinating, because he hadn't up until now. And now he's doing panels with you guys. Talk about that and how that's changed for you in getting people to open up.
Well, look, I don't think any of this is a linear path for anyone, for any of the participants, really. There's days that it's easier to talk about their experiences and days that it's harder. In the course of, putting this project together, we, came to learn that in a very short period in 2003, there had been 2 men arrested and later convicted on charges of child sex abuse, men who'd worked and at the time were working on the same show at Nickelodeon and worked on many others together. And, that wasn't really a fact that was out there. And that was surprising because this is a children's network. How did this happen? And, who knew and who was hurt? And in the course of sort of having those conversations, I came to hear enough to the point that I felt pretty confident that in the case of Brian Peck, that, Drake was the victim in that case. But, he'd never been public about that. And I had no idea sort of where he was in, his own process of dealing with that trauma. But I, wrote him a letter, and, I guess it was good enough that he responded. And I think, we began a back and forth, and it was not an easy process. He was very unsure, very reluctant at first to trust anyone, let alone this stranger. But I think he was also at a point in his own life where, he was trying to face that trauma in a way head on that he had not really ever. And, it got to a point where he did agree to sit down on camera. But, even after that, even the next day, it was, was this the right decision? How are people going to receive me? What is it like to, bear such intense trauma to the public? And, it's been sort of a process and continues to be that for him and for other people too.
and Drake, but then also his dad. I mean, I think if anything, that's probably the moment that had me bawling watching this was seeing his dad, and I tear up just thinking about it. Quite honestly, like, what was the process in getting him to agree, and Drake in sort of did you need Drake's permission, or was he how aware was he that his dad was doing this, and how tough was that for him to see that for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first time I sat down with Drake in person and he, shared his story to me, I think, I'd read the charges. I knew it was bad, but what I didn't appreciate until I finally spoke to him was just how much it was bigger than the specific abuse. It had been this mental and emotional roller coaster that had really torn his whole family apart, and in particular, that relationship between him and his dad. And I think, immediately felt that for people to understand the real impact bringing his father to the table would really convey that story. And, I talked to him about it. And I think he also sort of felt that that was important. And, that was a process of sort of him reconnecting with his dad about that process, and then me speaking with his dad and getting him to a point where he was ready to sort of sit down and share.
So take me back to, from what I understand, this all began because both of you had seen these cuts on YouTube, these sort of Dan Schneider. By the way, no relation. I just want to say I'm Michael Schneider, no relation to Dan, none whatsoever. I always feel like now when I'm talking about Quiet on Set, I have to say no relation. But so you had both had seen these cuts, and a lot of people have been talking about it through the years, and there have been stories and plenty of rumbling, and yet there was no real ramifications. There was, those stories would kind of quickly die out. What did you find, and sort of what piqued your interest and made you decide, okay, maybe this time we can do something that makes a difference?
We had noticed clips of videos that were made on sets that Dan Schneider presided over, and they featured young teens in scenes that were arguably sexual. Some feature Ariana Grande and Jamie Lynn Spears receiving a squirt of a viscous liquid on her face in a manner that's evocative of pornography, or Ariana Grande pouring water on her chest and her neck and her face while hanging off the side of a bed in a manner that's arguably sexual. And the questions that swirled around these clips, many of them came from folks who had grown up watching these shows, and they were now adults, and they said, did I grow up watching sexualized content and I didn't realize it because I was a kid? And these so-called jokes, and I think jokes should very much be in quotes, these so-called jokes went over my head. And if some of the content that I was absorbing as a kid was arguably sexual in nature, which adults were around when it was made, and which adults said yes and which adults said no? And if this content was made, what does that suggest about what may have been happening behind the scenes that ranges from inappropriate to illegal? And I think, listen, there's a lot of conspiracy online. I think some of these questions took on an air of conspiracy, or were dismissed by some as conspiracy. We saw at the root of it really meaningful questions that pertain to the working environment for children, and questions that pertain to the making of content that then influences the millions of children who have absorbed this content over the year, and it's shaped their sense of normal, it's shaped their cultural standards. I think at the company, Maxine Productions, that I founded, that Emma and I work at, it's really important that we take a rigorous journalistic practice and apply it to, questions that are pulled from or pertain to popular culture. And I think that, real powerful insight can be derived through that marriage. So we were looking at this and thinking about this, as were many of our colleagues at Maxine, colleagues who had themselves grown up on these shows. And then we saw reporting by Kate Taylor out of Business Insider. And she was also taking these questions seriously and did advance the plot on it, if you will, brought some new sourcing to it. Most of those sources at the time were anonymous, but it was still a big step forward. And we partnered with Business Insider and Kate And then Emma, swooped in. Emma's an amazing investigative journalist. I can brag for her and works with a great team at Maxine. And we were able to take a lot of those sources and convert them from anonymous sources to sources who are willing to go on camera, and then expand the source list beyond that. And it did feel as though there was this great alignment between, I think, what Kate had started, Emma's skill set, our team's skill set, and a moment in time. And I think Jeanette McCurdy helped shape that moment in time. She published a memoir that was, widely read and positively received. And I think it indicated to a lot of the survivors that their accounts were perhaps echoed in hers, and that they would too, if they decided to come forward, might be met by the same generosity and positivity.
Yeah, and there are all these show recap podcasts that have become really popular the past couple of years too. So everyone seems to be in this real confessional mode and ready to talk about some of the things, including the kids who were on some of these shows, some more problematic than others. So yeah, it does feel like it was kind of the right time. Of course, famously in her book, Jeanette McCurdy only refers to the creator, never mentions Dan by name. So it seemed obvious that sort of the Dan Schneider universe would sort of be the focus of this. But what did you run into in sort of focusing more on that, and the fact that he wouldn't talk to you? And then eventually did do his own response video. What was your interactions in trying to get Dan on? And, what kind of roadblocks did you come up against? And, what was that process?
We made a request to Dan to participate on camera. He declined that request. And so we sent him a list of questions and incorporated those responses in the documentary.
What did you make of him then going and doing his own sort of response video?
We have a 5th episode that was just broadcast last Sunday, premiered last Sunday, and is available to stream on Max right now. And in that 5th episode, a number of the participants from the original 4 episodes, including Gio and Brian, offered their response to Dan's video. And to paraphrase, they found it to be lacking and insincere in ways.
Yeah. And how did you two feel in watching that video?
We had offered Dan a chance to participate in our program. He declined. We sent along questions as well, and written responses are featured in our project.
I'll just also note, just before the doc came out, about a week or 10 days before, Giovanni, one of the participants, got a call from Dan, which she talks about in that 5th episode, in which he asked her sort of to issue a statement of support, before he'd seen it. I think that's certainly a surprising thing to happen about a project.
Obviously, Nickelodeon put out a statement that you include in the doc as well, but they've been very quiet beyond that, including a lot of folks who are still there, who were a part of the decision-making process at the time. Brian Robbins is, of course, a name that, he's been very quiet, but, he was an executive producer on a lot of these shows. He was a co-star of Dan's. And so, what do you make of Brian's involvement in this? And was that also, you don't see a lot of Brian in the doc, but was there sort of a sense of, how far can you sort of peel back the onion on how complicit a lot of folks, a lot of the management at Nickelodeon was? How far up does this go? And how much did you want to get into that?
We offered Nickelodeon a chance to send forth a representative to participate in the project as well, and they declined. We also sent along our questions, and their responses are included in our program. I think a lot of what we're hearing right now is a call for industry-wide reform and increased regulation. A lot of folks are talking about the absence of federal regulation that pertains to children working in entertainment, which feels to many to be shockingly absent. There is a patchwork of state laws in place that, there are state laws in California, certainly. There are state laws in New York, but even those state laws are, they don't mandate background checks for those that are working on sets, which I think, a lot of what we're hearing folks say after watching the film is that they're particularly shocked by that.
And I just think, obviously none of this happened, without a lot of people involved, a lot of people overseeing it. And there's still a lot of questions that we certainly have about, what people knew and what people thought at the time. And, those are all good questions.
What did you find in sort of, trying to approach Nickelodeon? What was sort of their, did they just send you a statement and that's it? Was there any sort of back and forth with them? Was there any sort of attempt by them to work with you in sort of, discussing what went on? Was there a curiosity from their part? Were they, kind of constantly calling what's in the doc? Or what was their sort of relationship with all of this?
So we stand behind everything that we've put in the film and worked, rigorously and vigorously to substantiate those claims. We worked to separate fact from fiction, to dispense and dispel conspiracy theory. And
look, it's not like I got an angry call from anyone, telling me not to do something or not to include anything. I think, companies often handle things very sort of professionally, and they take things and they respond with what they want. And, that's very much, how things sort of move forward.
So someone who hasn't spoken out is Brian Peck. What has your communication been like with him?
Brian Peck is aware that we petitioned the court to unseal the letters of support.
He hired a lawyer to oppose that. Mm-hmm. But obviously the court disagreed with that. And there's certainly, I think, a lot of questions about what happened in the sort of years after he was convicted, after he went to jail and registered as a sex offender and continued to work in Hollywood on sets, including sets with children for many years.
Yeah, I feel like that. When people ask you about a follow-up doc or more episodes, there's still, that's a good example of how did he continue to work?
Yeah, that's certainly a question I would, love to learn more about.
Is there a chance that there's, are you still working on more episodes? We already got a bonus one, I know, but are there bonus to the bonus where, some of these things you're still looking into? Or
I like the idea of bonus to the bonus. Call it bonus to the bonus.
Yeah, just keep bonusing us.
Bonus. We are passionate about the subject matter, committed to continuing the lines of investigation, open to hearing all related accounts when people are ready to come forward. I know some folks have been pressured by others to come forward. We're not pressuring anyone, certainly would never want to do that, but we are, we're committed and we're on it.
So, I think another thing that we all, again, we've gotten to the point where we've seen the story time and time again of the impact of youth and, television and the number of stars who have struggled in the years since. Britney Spears probably being the most famous, but Jeanette McCurdy, as we mentioned, there's so many others. Some of whom Amanda Bynes. It is a story that has been more public, but yet there hasn't been a lot of conversation about sort of the systemic sort of problems in Hollywood when it comes to working with young talent. And is there anything that you sort of learned in doing this that, maybe answers or solutions that you've thought about, or, if only this was in place? We talked a little bit about legislation, but is there something really lacking that is sort of has led to so many troubled youth in their adulthood because of what they went through?
I think broadly speaking, there's power dynamics at play on these sets that are often problematic for children. There's I think someone who wrote about the series at some point talked about an insidious incentive system that often doesn't create opportune conditions for children, right? And certainly when children who are working on sets are in a position where they're the primary, earner for their family, or where their revenue stream is meaningful for their family, that does not happen all the time. That certainly was not the case with a lot of the contributors in our film, but it does happen sometimes. One can easily imagine how that creates a incentive system that's problematic. So I think in the broadest possible sense, it's meaningful for us to audit power dynamics on sets, in working environments, to create situations where the youngest, those who might be deemed the most powerless, have more agency. And then, of course, we're talking about we're hearing very specific, lines of questioning and desire around federal regulation. And Emma can tell you more about SAG, and some of our contributors are involved in writing letters asking SAG to do a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's one thing where you can say this is a cure-all, right? I mean, you're intrinsically putting children in an adult environment, and they are growing up on sets at a time when they're still forming their own identities of who they are, and at the same time becoming a commodity for all sorts of, powerful studios or companies inside of Hollywood. That is a tricky tightrope any way that you cut it. But I think for those who sort of love that work, there's sort of this, conversation about how can we create more protections? And, some of that is, are there rules that, I know Jenny Kilgan, who was one of the writers that participated in Quiet on Set, talked about, she wrote a letter to SAG to ask them to review the sort of rules and policies regarding children. There's questions about, are there mental health specialists or social workers who could be on sets? Studio teachers are sort of supposed to be this person on sets, at least in California. They're not necessarily required everywhere, but a studio teacher, is often paid by the production or by the network. There's certain questions about who would they be beholden to if they also are operating in an industry that is essentially gig work, and you need those relationships to continue working. And then you really sort of create an opportunity where people who might want to take advantage can, if there aren't other guardrails.
I imagine there's a lot that you couldn't include that, didn't pass either legal muster, or you just couldn't quite, confirm, or didn't quite pass journalistic muster. But is there a lot that you just are sad that you weren't able to include, that is on the cutting room floor, that, maybe one day we can get this like ready to go or confirmed, or how much do you have that you weren't able to share or show in this series?
I think about the on-air dare section of the project, which is in episode 1. And, Brian Hearn speaks very specifically about his experience as a kid being asked to enact these scenes where his body was covered in peanut butter as a kid, and dogs licked the peanut butter off his body. And he didn't like this. He didn't want to do it, but he didn't feel as though he was in a position where he could ask for meaningful changes to that scene, or say that he didn't want to participate it without risking reprimand or perhaps even his job. And we included a few examples of these on-air dares in the program, but there are many of them. A kid was put a scorpion in his mouth, a live scorpion in his mouth. Another, kid was asked to sit in a bathtub of water that a trucker had sat in. I don't know if that trucker actually sat in the body of water, but there are a lot of very unpleasant, is maybe a generous description, but unpleasant, uncomfortable scenarios. And we could only fit so many in, but believe me, there's more.
and I think, more than just that, there's plenty of people that we talked to who weren't ready to share their experiences, or had an experience where it's like, if they're not willing to share, how many other people know, right, that could even confirm it. And so I've also never done a project where there wasn't other questions I wish I'd been able to land.
Yeah.
That's never really been the case.
Yeah. No, I can only imagine. And at some point you sort of have to have a sort of specific sort of guardrails on that this could be a 100-episode project if you looked at all of kids TV, but you sort of had to have a focus. But at the same time, I mean, there's, Nickelodeon, and then there's Disney. And did you decide like we just can't include Disney as well? That would make this too much of a monstrous project. Like this could go on forever. What were sort of the parameters on what you wanted to focus on? Was it mostly sort of in that Dan Schneider universe? Did it start to grow beyond that? And you said we need sort of guardrails, otherwise this thing could just turn into a monster.
We wanted to create a work that was sweeping and comprehensive as it could be, complex and detailed, all of that. So there was nothing sort of small about the hopes or the vision for it initially. But as you said, you have to you have to limit your remit. And we began by looking at one era at Nickelodeon, an era in which Dan Schneider wielded a tremendous amount of power and was the most influential creator. And it did expand beyond Dan slightly, and that's where the reporting and the inquiry took us. But, that's where we began.
So a couple of things that have been in the headlines that we should address is, of course, the Mark Summers reaction, which I know you've been asked about already, but how do you respond to him and his sort of he claims that he feels misled by the topic of the doc, and I know you've already responded to this, but tell me a little bit more about that, and were you surprised by his reaction? Have you talked to him since then? What were your thoughts on how he has reacted now to this?
We're clear with each participant in our project about the nature of our work.
Definitely clear. And I also want to be clear that nobody ever walked out on set on any of the interviews in Quiet on Set.
And the vast majority of our participants have left the project feeling incredibly happy.
So why do you think he said he walked out?
That's a good question for him.
Yeah. And Drake, obviously Drake has had a lot of problems through the years. He's sort of has his own issues that he's struggled with. How much did you want to get into that or not get into that? Because again, that probably would have taken you off on a whole different path.
Yeah, talking about like guardrails of the story here.
Yeah.
I mean, look, there was nothing about his experiences after Nickelodeon where, he didn't want us to go into. That was certainly not a stipulation by any stretch. I think we wanted to focus our story on what had happened with child actors on these sets at this time. And, as you see in the doc, there's sort of an ending part where we come back to all the child actors and you see there's a long shadow of that experience for everyone. And it takes different forms for different people. And we obviously wanted to touch on that, but that wasn't the primary focus of what we were trying to do in this project.
And you mentioned that you're hearing from a lot more folks now. And we kind of touched on this a little bit, but is there a chance of a follow-up now? Just wanted to kind of, because we've kind of talked about it, but haven't really, like, how possible is it that you may have another episode, or you maybe have a whole other documentary series that maybe tackles this from a different angle, or, but is sort of still in this space?
Well, I love the question, certainly. And I will never tire of hearing anyone ask for more along these lines. It's really, it's really gratifying. And it does, I think, indicate that, many have a sense that this is the tip of the iceberg. Whether or not that is true, time and reporting will tell. We're committed to pursuing it.
And, if people have stories they want to share, we're here. And, interested always in listening.
Real quick, one more thing I was curious about, because I imagine these were really tough interviews, some of them, especially with Drake, but then others as well. Did you have counselors there for them, or what was sort of the setup in terms of working with folks who were kind of working through their own issues?
Our approach, we strive to create a trauma-sensitive practice and an ethical practice, and that can mean different things for each participant.
Yeah, so including possibility of counselors on set or working with them afterwards, et cetera. We're going to edit out this long pause.
Our approach is trauma sensitive, and I think what you're hearing is that we respect each individual's boundaries and needs.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I guess if I know we have to wrap it up because you guys got to get going. For the both of you, I mean, I'd love to hear from each one of you, kind of what this, how this has sort of impacted you. I mean, how this is, how you're dealing with the success of this doc, but also just, I mean, this is it's tough to celebrate the success of something like this, but at the same time, just the tremendous reaction must just be overwhelming to the two of you. Did you expect this? I mean, what did you think when this first came out? The reaction would be versus what you're actually seeing and just feeling in the community.
Well, look, I don't think you can ever sort of imagine what a response is going to be. You sort of hope people will watch something, but certainly the level of interest is, beyond anything I would have really imagined. I think, for me, I know people trust us with their stories, with, having this project elevate something that, they've held dear to them, and it's different for everybody. But I think, for everyone that really participated, there was a hope that it would be more than just something someone would watch, that people would learn, that things would change. And I guess, sort of more than anything, I hope that, this has more meaning beyond just, somebody streaming it. And, that is sort of where, I'm glad that there's so much reaction and so much interest. But where does that lead? And that's ultimately up to other people.
Yeah. So the first step is, the fact that, because there is so much content out there, it is easy for things to sort of just be buried or for people to watch. And then it's a week later, people have moved on to the next thing. This is one that people are still talking about. And that's, as filmmakers, that's why you're in this business, is to get people to actually pay attention and to act.
You can't have an impact without engagement. So impact in our, in the work that we're doing begins with people watching the project. So thank you to everyone that's watching the project and, greeting it with generosity and compassion and positivity, and big feelings, and feeling aghast, or surprised or shocked or outraged. You said it's hard to celebrate something like this. And I think celebrating, using that verb, that's challenging, but it is gratifying to feel as though the work is casting light into shadow.
That's Quiet on Set producers Mary Robertson and Emma Schwartz. You can catch the documentary series on Max. And that's it for this edition of Variety's Award Circuit Podcast. Aaron Greenewald edited this episode, and Michael Schneider is the producer. Be sure to subscribe to the Award Circuit Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you download podcasts. Also, head on over to Variety.com and click on the Award Circuit tab to find the latest awards predictions and key races, as well as your daily fix of news, analysis, and reviews. For Jazz Tanke, Emily Longaretta, and Clayton Davis, I'm Michael Schneider, and we'll see you on the circuit.